Good morning, 101 Country WBDC, and of course to my viewers on 18 WJTS. This is your WBDC and WJTS In.form program. Of course, we're here once again to talk with another fantastic guest of ours, Miss Janet Schnell. She is here to talk about survivors of suicide of Dubois County, and of course, the September is Suicide Prevention Month, so we are going to talk about a multitude of different things again today. This is week 3 of our continuing series, just delving into all the things we need to talk about, no matter how hard they are. So, without further ado, Janet, it's wonderful to see you once again and talk about some different topics today.
Yeah, thank you for allowing me to be here to talk about a very important issue.
Right. So, first things first, We've talked on resources, we've talked on coping skills, and all of these different things that people really need to just have in the back of their brain just in case anything were to go awry, no matter who it is. So will you tell us a little bit more about, I guess, the more specific topic or individual we're going to talk about today is children or the younger demographic. So I want to pass it off to you and kind of let you tell us what you really want to kind of specifically talk about and what things to look for in all of those things of importance per se. So, Janet, please, without further ado.
Thank you. So every year in Indiana, the students in grades 6 through 12 will take a survey and talk about different things that are impacting them. And included with that is mental health. What we found out last year is that 17% of Hoosiers' kids in grades 6 through 12 have experienced suicidal depression. Of that 14% who've experienced it, 7% have actually made a plan. And that's kind of scary, knowing what we have in the impulsive brain, because our brain's not fully developed. So, that's really scary for us. Even the American Psychological Association has noticed that 50% of Hoosiers in ages 10 through 24 are depressed. And so really, again, we're going to look back at research that we have noticed through history that after a pandemic, during a pandemic, you really experience a lot of anxiety. After a pandemic, we experience a lot of depression. And when we're seeing this high of a rate when it comes to our kids, our teens, we really need to pay attention.
Right. And honestly, you definitely touched on it a bit more there. The pandemic is something that I don't think anybody ever planned for, and although we've lived through one about 100 years ago, we are still feeling the effects of the most recent one, and of course it affects us as adults, it affects elderly people, and it affects the ones you don't think about, the kids, the 24 and under, so really just understanding that they might be going through something just as much as everyone else is super, super important, and again, it's a scary statistic to think about, but it is something that again, they're living with it every single day. So knowing that there might be more under the surface is just super important. So, Janet, will you tell us about maybe some things to look out for when it comes to noticing maybe some different changes of mood or emotion in your kiddos?
Right. Yeah, some very clear indicators will be isolation, that they're withdrawing, they're not wanting to go out with their friends, talk to their friends, they're wanting to stay in their room, not really do a lot. This is also with adults, it's the same thing. What we commonly see and kind of brush off is we see anger. Mm-hmm. And so we seem to be very comfortable with someone being angry, but we're not so comfortable with them being depressed. And so when we see anger, what we end up seeing, if it's not addressed, it becomes depression, and they start to withdraw more so. And that's when they're starting to have more of the suicidal thoughts. Asking them about suicide does not give them the idea. That's one of the biggest myths.
Right.
And so if we talk to them about suicide, having thoughts, being depressed, you're not there to fix it. You're there to start the conversation. And that's really what we're looking for in our community, is to start that conversation, because we do have resources. If your kiddo is struggling, we have a lot of resources. Our school systems are fantastic. They're able to have mental health providers who are in the school system to help them address it on a daily basis, to be able to be there to help support them, to find the resources. But we also have great community resources also, virtual and face-to-face. So we have a variety of different options. We need to get them help, though, so that they don't start with the depression and then drop to where they're making a suicidal plan.
Right, and I want to maybe take our listeners and our viewers on imagine this scenario. imagine all of these emotions that we feel as adults, whether, again, there's a huge range of them. Imagine a kid also experiencing those, but not understanding where they're coming from or being able to comprehend why they're making them feel that way. That can be extremely, extremely overwhelming and just downright scary. So if children are not given the tools or at least the knowledge of knowing when anger might become depression or when sadness becomes a little bit more severe, that is what I would imagine to be a terrifying situation. Even as an adult, when you feel those things, it can be so just inhabilitating to what you do every single day. So imagine being a kid and experiencing those same things. So Janet, with that, kids might be able to hide it better than adults sometimes, and sometimes they don't. Is there anything that you would recommend as far as coping mechanisms, or maybe going back to what we loved to do as a child that you would really like to see adults kind of implement, or to, I guess, put that first foot forward? Because, again, if these kids don't know how to present it, how are they supposed to ask for help?
Right. So Survivors of Suicide does offer trainings, and one of them is the ACEs program, Adverse Childhood Experiences, where we as adults learn what we're seeing in children. Mm-hmm. And that it's not, we tend to kind of brush it off, and it's like they're just being a problem, but really there's something behind it.
Right.
So different types of trainings. So like I said, the ACEs training, the suicide prevention training, so that you know how to talk to them. And we teach the open body stance. Again, you're not becoming the therapist. What you're doing is you're becoming that caring, loving adult.
So for those who, again, I kind of touched on this last week, if you don't feel like you're qualified enough to even present yourself for this training, this is more of, I want to say, think of this more as an in-person self-help book or self-help course, so that people are better aware and better equipped of what to even look for, right?
Right. And you walk away with resources and materials, so that if you're in the training itself and you're like, I don't know if I remember everything, you're walking away with resources and information so that you can still go back and be able to look at it again when you're in that tough situation where you need to talk to someone. Right.
And so, again, we don't want to scare anybody into getting information, but this is Survivors of Suicide of Dubois County is offering these resources so that people, no matter where you are, you have these resources, whether it's for the kids that you are around all the time or the adults that you work with, or, again, the elderly. It's really for everybody. And Janet, you wanted to kind of highlight those who are doing a lot of hard work behind the scenes with Survivors of Suicide. So can you tell us a little bit about those people who, if anyone's interested, they can encounter and learn more about? These are local people with local names, faces, and just someone that you can confide in. So I want to ask, who's on your board? Who's behind the Survivors of Suicide team?
So Survivors of Suicide started in Dubois County in 1996, and we had a small group, and then we have since grown since then. These people you may actually recognize here in your community, and it's okay to be able to go up and talk to them face to face because you know who they are. And so I am the president, and then we have Janet Schmidt, who is vice president. We have Shelby Gordon, who is our treasurer, Emily Morano, who is our secretary and her HR person. We have Beth Harold, who is her expertise is in LOSS team, which is the local outreach to survivors of suicide. She knows how to reach out after a suicide death. We have Alan Schmidt, who's also part of the advisory board, along with Joni Wooster and Jesus Morano, along with Mary Lou Schmidt. And so Mary Lou, just this last year, has been awarded the 2024 Survivor of the Year, recognizing her for all of her efforts, everything that she's done here in our community. She started 1996 helping to develop Survivors of Suicide. And through her grief of losing her son, she has really set a great example for other people to say, this is really hard. And this is why we're here in this community, is that we know what it's like to lose a loved one from suicide, and we want to prevent suicide because we don't want anyone else to feel our grief, to know what we've experienced. And so Mary Lou has been a great example to show that with her grief, the things that she has done by going to the conferences, going out for trainings, and really sharing more about suicide prevention, and also be there for other people who lost someone to suicide, especially mothers, because she knows what it's like to lose a child.
Right. It sounds like you've got such a tremendous and strong board to kind of start with. And for those who, again, we talked to you in September for Suicide Prevention Month, and we are very, very thankful that you're able to come in and have these conversations with us to just get some type of word out. But for those who don't really know what Survivors of Suicide does for the rest of the year, can you tell us a little bit about what you and your board members are up to all the time? Because you guys are just as busy as everybody else.
We love going out in the community to do presentations. If it's an actual training or if it's more resources, information, just ask us. We're there to help help you with what you're looking for. And so we will go out and wear our shirts. People know it's okay to say the word suicide. We have a very strong presence in our community to let people know that we don't have to hide behind the word suicide anymore. I remember back in 1996 where it was very difficult to talk about suicide, to even say the word, because people would look at you, be judgmental. It was very difficult because you felt judged. And now it's a complete different world. Now we're able to talk about depression, we're able to talk about suicide, and when we normalize it, when we recognize that not everybody feels great every single day, there are days that it's okay not to be okay. And as survivors of suicide, we're saying, yeah, you're right. That's okay. And if you need help, we're here to help. We can help find resources. We have the resource sheet to different providers. We have a lot of information, a lot of different training. If we don't have what you're looking for, we know how to find it. And because of our connection in our state and with nationally, we can find resources that maybe we don't have here, but we can bring it here.
Right. And Janet, I've seen it a few times now in public where you're out doing your thing, spreading the word, and at least one person has to ask, what is up with your hair? So will you, again, in coming out and really just supporting not making suicide a stigma and whatnot, will you tell us a little bit about your infamous hairdo?
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate you saying that. You forget it's up here on the top of your head and you can't see it all the time. But yeah, so I am a licensed clinical social worker, and I would meet with people, adults and children, and sometimes that conversation's a little bit difficult to start. And so I started coloring my hair with a turquoise and purple with the help of a professional, and she helped to color my hair so that it would stand out. And I have a lot of people who come up and will say, I really like those colors. That's pretty cool. And I'll say, well, those are suicide prevention colors. And with that starts the conversation. And so people will talk about their experience with suicide, either being depressed, having suicidal thoughts themselves, or as a lost survivor. So really it's a conversation starter, and it does get the conversation started.
And I can only imagine the kiddos that see you, they love the colors and they just want to, you almost touch it, but of course, got to keep your barriers. But I think it says something about you and how selfless you are in being able to put that initiation or that first step on your person and have people come up and ask you, what does that mean? What is that for? And just really start the conversation where others might not really understand or know how to, I guess, properly do it. Or again, we are social beings that like to be more awkward than not. So feeling awkward about starting a conversation like that, you make it so easy to just start, and you never know where that conversation's going to lead, right?
Right. And that's why I really appreciate the board that we have, because everybody has a different background experience, from age to ethnicity to loss. And so we can always find someone that you can connect with to be able to talk more about your experience, and have someone who can really understand where you're coming from because they've walked in similar shoes.
Walked in similar shoes. And again, you are not alone and you matter. All very important things to remember, even if you are in a very tough patch right now or not. Janet, will you refresh us on maybe some coping skills that we've not yet talked about? Again, it does not matter how old you are or who you are or where you're coming from. Maybe just some things to take with you today as we go into the rest of the week.
We always need to remember that we have a national crisis line, 988, and that's accessible 24 hours, 7 days a week. You can call or you can text, and they're very friendly. They have learned they've been specially trained to talk about crises, especially about suicide. So we have that number immediately. So like if you're waking up at 3:30 in the morning, which is kind of a common occurrence, call the number. and they can help talk you through what you're experiencing. And a lot of times talking helps to make you feel better. And so we have those resources, but also look at maybe the different areas that we have help that's here. You know, how many times have you had people walking down the street saying, "How are you?" as they continue to walk past without really listening to how you are?
Or in the office every morning, right?
Right. So maybe make it a conscious effort today to actually stop and pause. How are you? And stop and wait and look at them and listen to what they have to say. It's really being present with that person and listening to what they say, not having to fix their problems. You're not there to fix. The fixing part is actually listening to what they have to say, and then not coming back with, the sun is really bright. It's so bright out without, "Oh yes, isn't it wonderful?" But listen to what they're having to say about the sun being bright, because it may be causing a migraine headache at that point. Listen to what they have to say.
Right, and I will say, it does not matter who you're seeing every day or who you're not. Making eye contact and showing face-to-face interactions, and maybe even giving them a smile if they cannot. That is just integral, because a lot of people, they feel so alone, and when they come to their workplace or wherever they end up every single day, that is their socialization. And so sometimes that's what people thrive off, and that's what they live off. So of course I will always advocate for being kind to one another every single day. But Janet, we've had a lot of different conversations over the past few weeks, and we will see you again next week to really hone it in. Survivors of Suicide of Dubois County is always doing fantastic work in the community, and this is your month to remind people that suicide does not need to happen, right?
Right. That what we really need to do is do a much better job at just really talking and being open to people and caring for our loved ones.
Very well said. Janet, thank you so much for another week of information and details, and we will see you next week to talk about bullying, lifestyle management, all these things that, again, we don't think about, but they're daily stressors for a lot of people. But Suicide Prevention Month is, again, this September and every September. So keep up the great work, and thank you so much for joining us once again.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. You have been listening to 101 Country WBDC and watching on 18 WJTS. This has been your In.form here on this Tuesday, and back to the tunes.